Welcome back to No Longer Conformed. We're continuing our study of the book of Acts. In this session, we'll be looking at chapter 6, verses 8 through 15 in this session that I've entitled, Stephen Brought Before the Council. We saw last time that deacons were chosen to serve the people of the early church. This time, we get a close look at two of them, Stephen and Philip. Stephen is probably the most famous deacon in the church. And with his story, we see persecution explode onto the scene. First, notice the debate. Look at verses 8 through 10. And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and signs among the people. Then there arose some from what is called the synagogue of the freedmen, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, and those from Cilicia and Asia, disputing with Stephen. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. He was full, it says, of faith and power. Remember verse 3 and the second part of verse 5 where it says, Therefore, brethren, when they were choosing the deacons, seek out from among you 7 men of good reputation, full of the Holy Spirit and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. And the saying pleased the whole multitude, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and the Holy Spirit, and Philip. He met the qualifications. He demonstrated the qualifications. The key point here is verse 10. It says they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. Stephen was too filled with the Spirit to be resisted, and they tried hard to debate him. Let me tell you something. A Christian filled with the Spirit and fulfilling God's call in his or her life is very hard to deal with. The second thing I want you to notice is the frame-up. Look at verses 11 and 12. Then they secretly induced men to say, We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and God. And they stirred up the people, the elders and the scribes, and they came upon him, seized him, and brought him to the council. It says secretly induced. The religious leaders stirred up the people in order to make false charges, blasphemy against God and attacking the law of Israel given through Moses. You see, those charges, blasphemy and the law, they go to the very identity of Israel before God. So how did they accomplish their false attack? Well, secret meetings where they shared false accusations. It's like what's referred to as the iceberg principle. When you see an iceberg in the water, only about 10% of the ice is above water. So if you try to deal with the things that you hear, you're still missing the 90% that you don't hear. So they used whoever they could to stir up the people, including elders and scribes. Why did they operate that way? Well, we read it. They could not beat Stephen in a face-to-face honest debate. So they had to resort to behind-the-back tactics. Isn't that the way it usually is? That is the method of cowards. If they can't confront you and deal with you face-to-face, they'll go behind your back and they'll try and do it in destructive ways with and through other people. If you can't accomplish your plan in a right way, use any sinful methods you can think or you think will work. This is the pattern, listen, of every movement to bring down a leader throughout history. And the stirred up people, it says they seized him. They seized Stephen and brought him to the council. But then the third thing I want you to notice is the trial. Look at verses 13 down to verse 15. They also set up false witnesses who said, "This man does not cease to speak blasphemous words against the holy place, this holy place, and the law. For we've heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and change the customs which Moses delivered to us." And all who sat at the council looking steadfastly at him saw his face as the face of an angel. Did you hear that? Set up false witnesses. Again, the charge of blasphemy against God. Using the temple this time as a prop. And against the law. Posing a phony concern for Judaism. And then the charge became a third time, but with a difference. A new twist for them. Look at verse 14. For we heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and change the customs which Moses delivered to us. They invoked Jesus Christ as the leader of the conspiracy against Israel and Judaism. Stronger words were employed as well. Destroy and change. Jesus is back on trial again. They tried him and they executed him falsely, and now he's back on trial again. Well, the important question for us is, how will Stephen respond to the charges? Well, that's the message for the next time. But notice verse 15. And all who sat in the council, looking steadfastly at him, saw his face as the face of an angel. They had to look at Stephen's face, and it was a true picture of a martyr for Christ. He had a heavenly appearance. He was filled with the Spirit, and as we will see next time, he had a fearless testimony. You think about that, and you have a